Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, in which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, get to chat to some of the most interesting figures and leading lights in this crazy industry we're in of writing and self-publishing. Today, we are delighted to have an awesome guest with us. It's Kyoko, who is a USA Today best-selling author. We've got two series to discuss here, and then she's also an author with the Black Panther collection of Tales of Wakanda, which was published by Marvel. I'm really stoked to talk to you, and she's here to talk to us about how to market your books and all sorts of different and interesting ways I think people are going to find super valuable. So thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. And of course, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
Doing great. Thanks, Roland. And thank you for joining us, Kyoko. You had contacted me about discussing this topic, and I really like it because it's the idea of, not just a book launching and ideas for book launching for self-published authors, indie authors, but also the idea of, sort of cost-effective ways of doing it, ways that, aren't going to break the bank, especially for authors that are new, where, you've only published, maybe it's your first book, right? And you don't really have a big budget. Or maybe it's not your first book, but you still don't have a big budget, right? Because maybe you need all that money to live on. So there are ways, of course, to market expensively and break the bank, but there's also ways to do it effectively without breaking the bank. And I'm glad that we're covering this so that everybody can sort of get an idea. Because even if you are a really successful author, doesn't mean you need to spend more money than you have to, right? So this is good for everybody. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing and how this all, you became, knowledgeable on this sort of topic.
Absolutely. So I have two different series. The first one, my debut series, is an urban fantasy series, a little paranormal romance as well, and that's called the Black Parade series. And my other series that's currently ongoing is a science fiction series that's about catching dragons in modern day America. As far as, like you mentioned before, I wrote a short story for Marvel Comics. It was published with Titan Books called Black Panther Tales of Wakanda. My story is called Ukubamba. It is about Okoye rescuing a young girl who was kidnapped and is the bad guys are trying to sell her into human trafficking. So it's very important that Okoye retrieves the girl as soon as possible before she gets outside of the country that they're in. As far as knowledgeable, so I kind of started this I went the traditional route at first. This was back in like 2009 or something, 2010 maybe. And I sent out query letters to different agents for about 2 years, and I didn't hear anything that positive about it. And so my dad was like, well, self-publishing is starting to rise a little bit. Why don't you look into that? I was like, oh, okay, I have nothing to lose. And so I did research for maybe about another 2 years, and I published The Black Parade in 2013. And from there, a lot of what I've learned and absorbed comes from different places, but a lot of it was centered on, there's a place called kboards.com, and there's a forum called the Writers Cafe. The Writers Cafe is absolutely indispensable. Pretty much anything you can think of that is related to writing and publishing and any of the needs that are surrounding that industry, I was able to find there. And from that, I just kind of started to slowly learn more and more of things that are more effective for selling books. And so that's kind of like a general background for me.
So the Writers Cafe is like an online forum, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so then when you started, and we started way back then as well, sort of in the 2013 range, I think was when I was first starting to self-publish myself. Same with Roland, yeah. And we started we started learning all this stuff from an online group as well, not that one, but it was a sort of a private Reddit group. Back in the day, things were really different, right? It was much easier to launch a book. You almost didn't really need to do marketing. I remember for my first books, we never did any marketing, and then eventually it was just like, throw $100 at Facebook and all of a sudden you were number one, right? Now it's like $10,000 and you're number 500.
Yeah, you got like a 5% margin of profit.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so how did you start your marketing, journey back then, and how has it evolved since then?
So the first thing that I was told, so at first I wasn't sure what to do. I had just had the book and it was published, and I was like, well, I don't really know how to sell copies other than like running around and telling people I have a book. And one of the first suggestions that I got from a seasoned author was, okay, well, since you only have the one book, is there something else that you can write to use for marketing purposes? And I was like, oh, okay. Actually, after I finished writing this one, I knew I was going to write a trilogy. I was in the middle of writing the second one, but it wasn't finished yet. And I was like, oh, well, I had been just doing these little short stories related to that first book that were just fun. And they had a lot of romantic teasing between the main couple in that book. And she suggested that I take that and use it to market. So essentially I had the one book by itself. I probably priced it at like $99 or $2.99, something to that effect. But I took that other one and I wrote a short story collection that was basically just an interlude, a romantic interlude for the two main characters. And it's something that you could pick up with not having read the first book. It's very easy to get into it because all of them are little isolated stories that are related to the 7 deadly sins. And so I took that and I would put it on, I think it was in Kindle Unlimited, and it's still there now. And I would just price it for free and then book different promos that were effective enough to get enough copies out the door that people would pick that up, read, and go, oh, that was pretty good. I actually want to read the book that precedes it. And so they would go and buy that one. And so that was how that worked at the very beginning. I did that until I finished that series, which is a 5-book series. As far as now, it's obviously much harder to get your stuff out and to get effective promos just because the sheer volume. Everybody, by now has learned how to self-publish if they want to. So a lot of it comes from different places. Typically, what I can do is kind of just walk you through a book launch of mine to kind of
Sure.
give everybody an idea, and then we can go into finer points. So if I know I have a book, like I have one that I'm planning to publish in late July. So I start typically with a blog tour. Usually it's a cover reveal, but you can also do a different type. They have different ones. And so the blog tours, I usually will do one that's about a full week. And so a blog tour, if no one's heard of that before, is where someone books different blogs that are related to whatever subject matter you have. So mine is science fiction. So all of the blogs that will sign up for that would be ones that are going to post about my book to readers who like science fiction. And so that's what happens during the week. Each day, several different blogs will post about the book. They usually do an excerpt, they'll do the cover, they'll do the title, and then sometimes they'll post the other books in that series preceding it so that you're caught up. And I do that right at the beginning to kind of get a lot of buzz going so people know that it's coming. After that, a lot of the times, I used to do book launch events. I don't do them anymore. I don't think that I have enough physical presence. I think so. I live in Georgia. I live in south of the city. So I've never really tried to do a local one because I was like, no, I don't think really that many people would be terribly interested. Because like I said, everybody can publish a book now. So what makes me special? So I don't really do those. I've done a couple of virtual ones, and that kind of depends on the time of year. It depends on a lot of different factors if you can draw people in. But for the most part, I stopped doing them a couple of years ago because I felt like it's enough that people have pre-ordered it. And I don't really need that. But I know they can certainly be successful given what people like to put into them. A lot of the times I'll do a Goodreads giveaway. Goodreads now has 2 of them, so you can do an ebook or you can do a paperback. But I've noticed people are really, really interested in having a free paperback, so I like to do that one. It can get you in front of a lot of people very quickly. I think my last one was crazy. Now, I'm sure there are records that are held, but mine was something like 2,500 people entered to get the book. I know.
How many copies do you give away?
I just do the one because I think that psychologically people are like, oh my God, I want to be the one. Like if you put 5, you can put as many as you want. It's unlimited, I'm pretty sure. But I think they see that one and they really want it. They just like, oh man, I want to be the one to get it. And so
scarcity, it's fear of missing out.
Exactly. So I think that works really well for me. I could probably do up to 5 or more if I wanted to, but I just stick with that. But I found that one's a really good way to get in front of people. Now it is a little bit pricey. I think it was either $119 or $130, I'm sorry. And but like, to me, I thought it was worth it just because it gets because when you enter a Goodreads giveaway, it automatically puts it on that person's to be read shelf. Now they can take it off there if they feel like it, but most of the people don't do that. I was going to say 90% of them don't take it off there after they've already entered. So you also have this chance of kind of a backlog situation. The person might not win the contest, but they might come back one day when they're looking for books and go, oh yeah, I forgot about this one. And then, they click your book and there you go. So to me, it's an investment, but I think it's usually worth it. I do have a mailing list. As far as my mailing list goes, I started it probably a couple years after my first book. And then I like to go to cons. I don't go to a ton, but I just go to the ones that are in Georgia that are relevant. So like Jordan Con, Multiverse Con. I had an opportunity to go to Dragon Con, but didn't because I just don't feel comfortable being around 100,000 people in the pandemic. Just sorry. So,
Good point.
but that's what I do.
Fair enough.
Yes, at the table, there's always a little sign up sheet, and you can get a free ebook from me if you sign up for that. So I do that, and mailing list it goes up and down with effectiveness, but I like it just because it really does keep me in the know for the people that are very, very devoted to my writing. So even if they don't always click on things, but they do open the emails and they are reading them. So I'm a big proponent for mailing lists, but it's very important to use them responsibly because a lot of authors think that they can just swap their list with someone else's without that person's permission, and that's not okay. It's not permitted. You should not be doing that. So I just keep to mine. I'll just send them maybe once a month or so. So they're updated on the different things that I'm doing. After that, as far as one question I get a whole lot is how to generate reviews. And so the mailing list is very good for that. Typically, I'll ask the people that are on it, hey, would you like a free copy of the book in exchange for a review? And typically, I'll get, maybe about 10 people are interested in doing that. And so they'll get the book and they'll read it and post a review. So right out of the gate, I have a couple, up on Amazon. And I've found
you just have to be careful on that because, Amazon rules. And if they're, if Amazon thinks that they were given the book in exchange for a review specifically, that's against their rules, right? So it has to be, you gave them a book and they voluntarily decided to review it, right? It's this fine distinction, right? And so sometimes somebody will write in their review something like, I got this book in exchange for review, and then a lot of times that'll get blocked by Amazon, and so you just have to be very careful about that and make sure that everyone understands it's voluntary and Amazon understands it's voluntary. But yeah, definitely, it can be a good source for sure.
Yes.
When you when you were saying you go to the cons, you're going as a like you get a table, I guess, right? You're not saying you're going as a guest.
I just go as a guest. So most of the time. So Jordan Con I've been to multiple times. Multiverse I've done multiple times. I've done MomoCon before. I think MomoCon I used to attend just as an attendee because I'm a dork. But I'm trying to remember if I've been a guest. I think I've been a guest maybe once or twice there. So I do participate in panels. I've been doing them for a pretty good long time. So as I started to build steam and people got more acquainted with who I was, that was when I was able to kind of get guest status. I would say that was somewhere, and maybe like the 2015s or so is when I started to submit myself as a guest, and they could go and look up my work and go, oh, okay, well, you've got a decent number of followers and you've got a few accolades here and there, and so they would allow me to be a guest and a panelist. So I do typically the local ones here.
So you just go on panels, or you actually have your own booth? Or
most of the time they let you have a booth. You can purchase one separately, and I like to do the smaller ones just because, one, we are in a pandemic, and then two, just to me, the smaller the con, you don't have those really expensive tables, because again, like Dragon Con, I'm not kidding, is $1,700 for one table. It's just
wow. So for the smaller ones that you're doing, what's the cost of a table generally?
It's not bad. So Jordan Con is $30, Multiverse is $50, MomoCon is a little higher, but that's fine. MomoCon has really moved up in the world, so that one I think now is one of the second or third largest in the state. So theirs is a little expensive. But I like to do the ones that are a little bit more geared towards writing, like Jordan Con and Multiverse, or science fiction fantasy cons specifically. So like I said, MomoCon I typically won't do, but I might attend if they have somebody I really want to meet.
And then if you do have a table, so what do? You just show up. You probably have to get some kind of a, I don't know, banner or something, print out some paperback copies to have so that you can sign and sell, I guess. And then is that typically what you're doing? And you're talking, I guess, if somebody comes up, they're a fan and they want to talk to you or whatever, but is that generally the purpose of doing the con, as just a guest with the table, or as an author with a table?
Yes. So it's a really good opportunity to just network. I've met several really awesome people just being at cons. And now I've got like this little writer group there's a couple of different little writer groups that I'm into now, that from people that I met at cons. And so it's really good because if someone has read your work before and they see you, they're like, oh, cool. But other times they're just curious. A lot of them are there specifically to pick up new series. And so you just get to actually pitch your work. And I find that it's a very helpful practice, so that, you know, if you're out and about in the world and someone does ask you for your book, you know how to pitch it because you've done it before, just from con experience. And I think that it's really fun because a lot of people do still love having a physical book. I don't subscribe to that whole thing of like, no, everybody's into ebooks, they want to read on their phone. No, they don't. People like holding it in their hand. It's a nice feeling to have a physical book, and that I'm there to sign it too. I think people really enjoy that. And just like I said, having conversations, meeting people, even if they don't buy a book, it's just fun just to go hang out.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Go on with your so there was cons and Goodreads, and then your mailing list. What else?
And other things that I do, I think I have just the one book trailer, but I might work on a second. I hadn't decided yet because I'm still debating about audiobooks. But so book trailers are another really good way to kind of get people's attention, and they don't have to be elaborate. They don't have to be skits. They don't have to be expensive. The one that I did was actually a typography type of thing. So it was an excerpt from the book. And so the typography is on the screen and it's like really dynamic, and you see these cool visuals that go along with it. And I really liked how that turned out. So they can be very simple, but it's just an extra way for the people who are more visual and don't really want to look at a lot of text in your advertising. That's a good way to go. And then social media is, I guess we'll touch on that because that one's fun to talk about. People don't realize that social media is not really for selling a book. If you just go out and try to sell a book without engagement, it's not gonna work. Nobody's going to hear you. They're just going to, if you like especially the Twitter accounts that are just constantly spouting the book back over and it doesn't do anything. Every once in a while, you can get to certain threads or certain hashtags that are more productive. But in general, social media is for engaging. So you are meeting and talking to other people about things that you like to do or don't like, and anything that's of interest to you. And as you attract more people just based on your personality or the things that you like to talk about, then you can eventually transition every once in a while and be like, oh, by the way, I have a book. And then, you're done.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree. I've talked about this before because the most successful authors that I see on social media are doing exactly that. They're talking, especially on Facebook, they're talking to their audience. They're sharing things about their life. Whether or not they're true, I don't know. But like they're sharing. They're not just on there and saying, hey, I have a new release. It's just, they're saying, hey, this happened. And sometimes they're talking about the writing process. I wrote another chapter today, or they have little things like I'm trying to think of a good name for my character. What do you guys suggest? And then maybe they'll, take one of those suggestions or whatever. But it's all about the engagement, like you said. And then when you go to sell a book, people are invested in you. They want to sort of help you succeed. They want to read your book because they feel like they know you. And, I know this person. I'm going to read their book. It's not just like, I'm getting their advertisement all the time. So yeah, I completely agree, especially Facebook, very much so, Twitter as well. I think TikTok is becoming sort of like with the book talk tag, people are using that to, sell books more than it's hard to, in your 15-second clip, share too much about your life and whether people are that interested in that, right? And to make it engaging and all that stuff. But in general, like those ones for sure. Instagram too is like, you gotta have your pictures of your life and you share your stories and all that. So yeah, no, I totally agree that a lot of authors are doing it wrong, but I get why. Like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of investment, right? And not everyone has the time for that.
And those of us who write sort of steamier, racier stuff, there is sometimes we write under a pen name, and then it's very difficult to be authentic on social media if you are living behind a pen name. And it's not, you're not necessarily being disingenuous. It's just obviously you don't necessarily want your mother to read the books about, your reverse horror books or whatever.
Exactly. And then so I also do excerpts. I like to do, typically I don't do a whole first chapter, but I'll do like the very first scene of a chapter, and I post about 3 of those, and people usually really like to gravitate towards them because it gives you this really sense of excitement as you're waiting for the book to pop out. And that can be very easy. I just pop it up on a blog, and then I'll just tweet or post on Facebook every so often, hey, I got this excerpt up, if you want to see what's coming down the pipeline, that kind of stuff. But I think that's, and then so last, and this is probably because it's the most dense, learning which promotion sites work the best is vital to what we do in self-publishing and even into publishing too, because a lot of the times social media can gather you people, but if you want to gear it towards readers specifically, that's usually how you get a little bit more traction in terms of book sales and just a following. So there, and like we said before, trying not to break the bank. So obviously the big one is BookBub. And they reject 90% of everyone who submits. I've never gotten one. I probably never will. That's okay. There are people who've been
we never got one either.
Oh yeah, there are people who've been trying for literally 15 years and they never got one. And it's because it's as much of a gatekeeping as actual traditional publishing. It's that bad. It's like, nope, we reject like 90%.
Yes, you're so right.
So I don't depend on that one. I have tried some of the pay-per-clicks on BookBub, but I'm still working it out. It's a little hard to learn how to do, but I think that just poking my head in every once in a while and learning. But so again, like I said, that's the largest one. You've got stuff like Bargain Booksy and Free Booksy. There's e-reader News Today. There's Robin Reads. There's a lot of different ones where the cost varies, and so do the requirements. So some of them, they actually don't require you to have a certain rating or a certain number of reviews. Some of them do. And so you can kind of just go through different ones and see the level of effectiveness. And so that's what a lot of this journey is just testing which of your books work the best in those different types of sites. And knowing that typically I try not to submit twice in 1 year. Because on average, a lot of those places, so what they're doing most of the time, they post on their site and they usually have a very dynamic mailing list. And those mailing lists, they don't change terribly often. They do grow, but they don't really change that much. So that's the reason I try to only submit about once per year, depending on which place it is. Some of them are robust enough, like they cycle through new people, that you can probably do it twice a year or so, but I try to just keep it to maybe once or twice per year. But I find those are a very effective way to get directly to people who their intention is to read, whether it's immediate or it's, some months down the line. But I think that promo sites are probably the strongest that you could do.
Yeah, and a lot of them have requirements on genre and price, right? Some of them, it has to be discounted to 99 cents or free. Some of them, like ours only takes romance and has to be free at 99 cents. Others are, they take other genres. I think BookBub, I think they have levels where there's like a free one or a 99 cent one. But I think you can even, used to be able to do $2.99. I'm not sure or maybe, I don't know. But if you go to the sites, they all have their requirements on there. And like you said, everybody needs to test out which ones work for them, because just because one works well for, your friend who writes the same genre doesn't mean it'll work as well for you. So, you give them a try, track the results, see how it works for you. And then, go pick the ones that work and stick with those for a while.
Yes, absolutely. And things change very quickly in our industry. I think that's why audiobooks, I think, is the only, between ebooks and print, is the only one that's consistently gone up and has not gone down at this point in terms of sales and things. But the flip side of that is, one, it's a much bigger monetary investment. And two, we all know what's going on with ACX right now. Oh oh goodness, it's it's a bit of a mess. So that I think is going to be a very interesting change in this industry, because a lot of the authors are getting fed up. They're like, look, there's no reason that you're cutting into the royalties as badly, and asking for exclusivity, that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be very interesting seeing who comes to the forefront of audiobooks if ACX kind of continues on the path that it's going on.
And they don't show any signs of changing at the moment, do they?
Yeah, I was going to say at most they finally, and this took, I'm going to think maybe 2-3 years, the return policy. They only just finally said, all right, fine, we're not going to let people return your book after they've listened to the entire thing. Which, again, I'm laughing because it's laughable. It was like, I'm sorry, how does that work? Like I go to a restaurant and eat a cheeseburger and then ask for a refund. I ate the cheeseburger. Yeah. What is there a refund? So it's going to be interesting seeing if they decide to adjust, because otherwise, I mean, we've seen industries come and go, like Blockbuster, and Netflix is already acting like they're about to go down that road.
That's the problem, is somebody gets so big that they think they can just change all the rules, and they think everyone will just keep on keeping on with them. And it's like, that's not how it works, right? There's competitors and there's reasons why you got that big. And then all of a sudden you change those reasons. People don't have the loyalty. There's no reason for them to be loyal to you, really. It's not like, they've been paying you all this time. It's not like you've been doing something so nice for them. Like you've been giving them a service, and now you've stopped giving them the service, or you've changed the service, and you can't expect that they're just going to be happily go along with it, right? So
there are other options. I think that at the end of the day, they're forgetting that there are other places that you can market your work, and you'll still make that money, and they'll give you better royalty rates. So like I said, it'll be interesting if they're going to adjust themselves, or if they think that they're too big to fail, and they'll find out pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's, you've taken us through the launch. So now, from your experience, you're tracking obviously how all these things are doing. So what are some of the, so you said that newsletters are probably the best bang for your buck if you find the right ones for you, and they can be cheap, or they can be expensive like BookBub, but a lot of them are on the cheaper end. So what are some of the other sort of cost-effective ways that are still, going to give you some kind of return for your marketing dollars?
So guest posts and interviews like this one are often a really good way to kind of get yourself into, especially since it might be in different, more niche spots, I find. So lots of places just accept open submissions in general. Other ones, you can kind of reach out to them and say, hey, this is something that I think that would perform well on your website. Is there, room for guest blogs? Those are really excellent, because it allows you not only to educate depending on what you're talking about, but you also kind of get to show what you're about, your personality, the different things that you get to talk about, and you get to meet some really cool people. I think is definitely an excellent way. And they're a lot more receptive than, let's say, so one thing that I don't do anymore that I used to do in the beginning was trying to email different reviewers to review my books. And it's too time consuming, and like 80% of them don't respond. And it's not, and that's not to knock them at all. Obviously they have like not enormous, piles of books that they have to get through. But that was one I kind of learned of, like, okay, I just need to get this many reviews and then I'm just done. I'm not going to ask for any more, because again, it's just, you have limited amount of hours. You can only read so many books. So that was one that I learned to kind of let that go.
What sort of sites are you guest posting and and doing interviews for? Are they sites where they're primarily targeted at readers, so that to grow your audience, or are they targeted at authors? Like this podcast is more to authors, because it's about author related topics. But if your goal is sort of to gain exposure, I would think that you'd also want to be getting in front of readers as well. But I don't know, maybe maybe you have some insight on that actually.
So I do both. I try to get some interviews with the ones that are more author centric, and then the others that are more reader centric. So I think like It's Right Now, that's just an example. I think, because I think I had a interview with them at some point recently. But there are different, and there are also people who are really helpful, and they put these big old lists together that say, hey, here are places that you can submit if you want to do an interview or if you want to do a guest blog post. So those are super helpful. You can just Google that and then it'll pull up a whole list for you. And you can just kind of go one by one and submit to different places. Awesome Gang is another one. I know that they do those a lot. And those are geared towards both. So there are some that are the audience's authors and some the audience's readers. So it can be anybody that'll come by and take a look at your work.
Okay, that's cool. So it's called It's Right Now. I just
as in right, as in R.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, WRITE.
Right. Yeah. So you just basically send them a query about the topic you want to talk about, and then they just let you know. And then, you know, because we've had people write guest posts for us as well, but again, they're the more on the author centric side of it. But it's the same sort of thing where they just, you know, send me an email and say, hey, you know, I can write a post about this topic, and you know, generally I'm happy to.
And then some of them are really cool. They're very like Awesome Gang is like this. So they just give you a form to fill out and you fill it out yourself and they will post it. Now it doesn't, I'm not sure whatever their timetable is, but all of them, they do accept immediately. So certain ones you don't even have to go like through a gauntlet to ask. Some of them are like, oh no, we want all the authors who are active out there to get their voice heard. And so they allow you to just fill it out and then they post it.
Okay. All right. That's useful. Okay. So then what else we have? So when you were talking about blog tours, like what do you pay for something like that? And where do you go to set that up?
Okay. So it depends on where you want to go and what you want to do. So some of them will be a single day. Some of them are cover reveal single day. Some are 1 week, 2 week, month long. It is varied all over the place. Express blog tours is one I've used. And then Silver Dagger tours is one I like a lot. Hers used to be voluntarily, you would pay what you can or what you would like to pay. I think at this point she did go ahead and set one, but typically they're under $50 almost every time. If you want a really big one where they do, I mean, bells and whistles and they're posting everywhere and they do all these social media things and that you can pay more and they have really, really extensive ones. But typically I've done Express and I've done Silver Daggers because I think that it's really cool because they also make a lot of promo art for you and you get to use that for the rest. And it's not always blog tour specific. So you can actually use those promo images for the rest of your career, which is super helpful because I have no Photoshop skills at all. I let my cover artist do her job because I certainly don't know how to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And those are cool too. I was going to mention, and the blog tours as well, depending on which blog, some of them will just post an excerpt, but other ones will actually interview you. So you get a little bit more, you get to explain a little bit more about you and what you do, depending on which ones.
And okay, and then if you were to, you'd mentioned doing like a book trailer, right? Mm-hmm. So are you doing that yourself or are you paying to have that done?
I pay to have that done. I use Fiverr. So the first one that I did back in, I think probably around 2013 or so, that one was done through Fiverr. So what we ended up doing, it was a two-part thing. I found the voice actor first and I asked her to read the copy. And then after she was finished, I went to the book trailer person and said, hey, I've got this. Here's kind of what I would like it to look like. Can you assemble that together? And then they sent me a preview and it looked really good. And I was like, okay, we're all set. So, and then they mix it together themselves. So that is how I did it. Some places is all in one where you can give them what you want and they do it all themselves. You don't have to put the two together like I did. But yeah, Fiverr is usually where I find them.
So you don't get the book or the movie trailer guy in a world where you know.
I would love that. We need to get the honest trailer guy to do one of my books.
Yeah. So like how much would you pay basically for, you know, on average for like a trailer like that? And what are you doing with it? Where are you putting it? And how can you gauge whether it's you know, effective for you?
That one was definitely under 50. I would say it depends on how complex you want your book trailer to be, what's involved with it. But on average, it's under $100 typically. Because again, most people have a short attention span. So you're really trying for either 30 seconds, a minute, or a minute 30. You really don't, unless you're going to go like full production, it's not going to last longer than that because you just really want to kind of hit the point and then go home from there. As far as, what was your other question?
where, like, what are you doing with it, and how are you gauging whether or not it's effective?
I have one on my landing page for my homepage. So as soon as you click on it, it's got the book trailer right there. You can just do that. It's good. It's another one that's really good for Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, because like I said, on average, people are just scrolling and they'll see something that's nice and short. I don't think mine's even a minute. I'm pretty sure mine is under a minute. And so that's really good for just occasional reminders of, hey, I've got this out here if you want to, check out the book. So it's very good for social media in particular. I don't know, I wouldn't do book trailer heavily on Facebook unless you're someone who posts videos a lot. I noticed that the people in my Facebook hate it when I post videos. They never like anything. They're very photo or text based. So that I just don't do on Facebook. But typically on the shorter formats, it works really well for those.
Right. And so that's not really to drive sales necessarily. It's more as something to put on your website to give that visual sort of pop.
It's
like
an
there's
extra,
no real way
extra hook.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I got. And then for when you do so you mentioned like with the Goodreads thing, that was $150 or whatever to run that sort of giveaway, plus the cost of the books that you're giving away, especially obviously if it's paperback, mailing it out, all that stuff. And then when you go to like you said, you don't do them that much, but the signing or the book launches that you would go to in person or whatever, how are you doing those? Are you approaching a bookstore and saying, hey, can I come and just do a signing or something, or how do you do that, and do you have to pay for that? Or
so I'll use my colleague as an example. My colleague is Dr. Glenn Paris. He just published Dragon's Air I think spring of last year. And so he decided to do an in-person launch party. So what we ended up doing is there is a place in this city called Stone Mountain, and it's called, I think, the Vibrary. And it's called the Vibrary because it is a library that serves wine. So Vibrary. And so
that's my kind of
that sounds like my place. Yeah.
Let's go there immediately. It was lovely. I was like, oh,
I don't think we have one around here, but maybe I should start one.
Right? It's such a good idea. And so he approached her and said, hey, I'd like to do a launch event. And so we ended up paying a fee. I don't think it wasn't bad. I think it was like 130. And so what she did is she kind of not closed it down, but the event was held there. It was a private event. And so they had catering. So just some nice little finger foods, fruits and cheeses, and a little charcuterie board and things like that. And obviously people could purchase wine. And the venue was probably big enough for about 40 people. So we kept it nice and small. It was very intimate. And so what we did is like a very loose program. So people could come in, they were hanging out and talking, and then, just kind of eating finger food and stuff. And so he did an interview while he was there. And then he did a reading after that point. And so I think that is a really good way to especially if you're not like a very known author, to kind of get your foot in the door, because obviously it could be people just walking by and they could come in and take a look. And then they had her patrons who were regulars, and then he had his friends, and then he had some other people that he invited as well. And so, like I said, it really doesn't have to be this huge production, and it really doesn't need to be like a Barnes and Noble or anything like that, because obviously they can only bring in people that are really, really going to sell books. So they're really looking at your New York Times bestsellers type folks. So I think that's a really good way to do it, to just kind of keep it nice and intimate. So if people want to ask you questions, if they want you to sign their book, if they want to just, mingle and hang out with other people, I think that's a really good way to go.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, actually.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And so the virtual ones are, I guess, similar, but over, I don't know, how do you do the virtual ones? You do them on Zoom or something? Or?
Oh, no. So I was going to say, I like to set up a Facebook event page, right? And so on that event page, what happens the day of is I would do trivia questions where I would give away prizes. I would do like a little short reading of an excerpt from the book. And then a lot of it is really just people congregating, asking you questions if they have any, or you're just interacting with the people there. And I kept it very short. It was like a Saturday for 30 minutes, So
how are you doing a reading on Facebook though?
So I think I just went live on Facebook.
Oh, like a live video feed
So I would
kind of
just
thing. Okay.
do live on Facebook. And
Right.
like I said, my reading was under 10 minutes. So it was probably about 5 or so. So I just hopped on. I thanked everybody for coming, gave a little background about the book, a little bit of trivia. And then I did the reading, and then I ended that. And then we just kind of went into the trivia questions where people could win different prizes.
Oh, that's pretty good. And then how does that get publicized? Is that up to you, or is that?
And that's why I like to use the event. So the event is very easily shareable. So when you create that event page, you can now just share it either to individual people in your messenger, you can share it to your personal page, you can share it to your professional page, and then you can share it externally. The other thing is, if you want to, you can also do an Eventbrite. Eventbrite is totally free. It doesn't have to be in person. It can be virtual, and you can set that up. And same thing, the link will go out anywhere you send it. It's nice and easy for a person to just like market that they want to go. And I found that was pretty. They enjoyed it pretty well. It's just very simple. Now you can do really elaborate ones where you have guests who come in and they talk about different things, but I just wanted to keep it kind of small because I'm an introvert. So
Yeah, and I mean, so that's one of the cost effective because it's free. Other than the idea of if you're doing a giveaway or something, then well, if it's an ebook, then it's a soft cost anyways. But if you're giving away paperbacks or something, then there's a bit of a cost there, right? Just getting the copies, sending them out. But yeah, in terms of cost effective, it's not much better than free.
Oh yeah, and it can be very effective. You can end up drawing a lot of people. And like I said, I try to get word out about 90 days out from any release. And so it gives you plenty of time to build it up and remind people that it's there. And then you just try and pick a time where, people will be free.
Right. And hopefully they're sharing it out and stuff too. Right?
I think what's so valuable about this, I mean, at the end of the day, you pay for promoting your books one way or another. You either pay cash to advertise it or you pay in time and effort. But the thing is, when you're just starting out, time and effort is something you have that you might not have cash. And also, if you can do it right, you can be very, very effective.
Absolutely. Yes. I very much agree with that. Like when I was I did the indie forum with Book Life a couple of days ago. And that was one of the first things of trying to get new people to understand. It was like, look, if you're going to self-publish, all of this is on you. It's not getting disseminated to someone else. So it is a definite investment of time and money. But again, people need to know about the time element. If you want to be any measure of success in this, you've got to put in the time. It can get a little bit, tedious and such. But if you put it in the right areas, you can certainly find levels of success.
Absolutely. You get in you take away what you put in, right? Yes. So, yeah, like we were saying at the beginning, like it's changed. It used to be that you could just publish, but now, I attended a Zoom conference yesterday. It was like one of Mark Dawson's classes, and at the beginning, he was saying something about how. Basically, you cannot have an effective book launch anymore without doing promotion. Like you have to do promotion. There's too many books out there. You will not get seen if you do not promote it. And so whether you're spending the money to do it or you're finding these more cost-effective and creative ways to do it, either way, you still have to get the word out there that you exist, and otherwise you're just lost in the millions of books that are published every day.
Absolutely. I was thinking of another thing is so a smaller thing to do, but it's more engagement, not so much as of the sales side of things. People like to do writing sprints, or they like to do little tiny meetups where they do certain, again, writing sprint is probably the best word I can think of. And so they'll all participate and say, hey, we're all going to write 500 words for the next hour. And then they all just, and they're tweeting as they're going, and then they all share it with each other at the end. That's another, again, completely free thing that you can do. Also, it's great for meeting people and just kind of, talking about the craft.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
That's the way you keep saying, isn't it?
Yes. Especially as an author, right? You're alone. So sometimes it's helpful to sort of have that community where you can sort of like write with them. It's almost like your coworkers in your separate cubicles, but you're in your separate houses and you're sort of all working on your own little piece, but you can sort of still converse and have that social aspect.
Yeah, I
You want to
like
be left
it.
the hell alone, accepting company.
Yes.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we're running out of time. This has been such a fascinating discussion, but I think for me, hopefully people are listening to this and really digging it, because a lot of the stuff that you're talking about the low hanging fruit, the stuff that you don't have to necessarily make a huge financial investment in, you do have to make time and thought and effort investing in it. But if you get the ability to do that, and you learn what resonates with people and what gets a response, and then you pair that with advertising, it makes it work. Whereas I think so many authors are like, oh, if I just throw money at advertising, it's going to work, and then they lose money and they're disappointed and they don't understand. And it's because the stuff that you're doing builds the framework. It's like you could spend all the money you want publicizing something, but if people don't want it, they're never going to buy it. Whereas if you can find out what it is that makes people want it and then advertise it, it's the recipe for success.
Absolutely. One thing I always tell people is never say that my book's for everybody. No, it's not. There's not a book on this planet that is for every last person on the planet. No, you find your people and you advertise and you go hang out with them. You don't need what book's for everybody. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Absolutely. Well, where can people find your books, speaking of?
So I am published in pretty much all platforms, but the centralized, I have my own website, is shewhowritesmonsters.com. All of my books are there. The Black Panther Tales of Wakanda anthology is there as well. So if you're interested in that, like I said, my story is Ukubamba, and that's about Okoye rescuing a young girl who was kidnapped. So all of my stuff is there, and it's available. Actually, both the different series, the the Black Parade and of Cinder and Bone, the first book in both is permanently free as an ebook. So you can go and download it with no risk.
That's amazing. Okoye is my favorite character in Black Panther. So that is wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. Did you have any final thoughts?
I just want to thank you for coming on and talk to us about this. And, it's really a super important point that, so many authors really have to, when they're starting out, need to get their head around is, you're a self-published author. Nobody's going to do this stuff for you. You have to do it. And so, if you don't have the money, you're going to have to find the time. But if you do it right, if you keep track of what works and what doesn't, it gets easier over time. And you, like you said, you find your audience, you discover where it is that you need to market and spend your time and your money and focus. And each book will get successively easier. So thanks for coming on and sharing it all with us, because it's really, really helpful information.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, if you appreciated what was spoken about today, make sure you leave a comment down below and let us know about it. While you're there, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I think there's a little bell so you can get notifications. And we will, of course, drop a link down below so you can find all the books that we've been talking about right now. Thank you so much for joining us, and do join us again next week when we come back with another episode of Fully Booked. Until then, cheerio.